back, folks, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to either the Scottish Wisdom or the Jack Christie Show. Quite simply, I'm your faithful host, Mr. Jack Christie. Got nobody on at this moment in time, but welcome. Now, today, this is going to be a relatively basic one. We're going to talk about the weather of Scotland and why our brave and courageous nation as a historical people have become so creative and created the rest of the world as we know it today. We're going to start with a very famous tune. There we are. Scotland the Brave. Now, Scotland the Brave is one of our most famous songs throughout this, the history of our beautiful nation. But I'm going to take it as a little bit of inspiration today as to why we are such a brave nation. And I'm going so far to suggest the reason why we're such a brave nation is because our weather is terrible. So, yeah, our climate in Scotland is not to be lauded about. Quite famously, it's always seen as terrible, always raining, cold. Now, I think that's overhyped, being honest. I think that is overhyped. Particularly in the east coast of Scotland, we have much favourable weather to the west coast of Scotland, but I never knew how much as thus. But upon a little bit of quick research onto this multitude of details about weather and the climate in the country of Scotland is most temperate and oceanic. It tends to be very changeable, but rarely extreme, as we already know. The country is warmed by the Gulf Stream, which majority of people will already know this. And it has much warmer areas at similar latitudes. For example, CamMackay in Russia or in Canada, which is sort of the same height, but of different. Since we get the Gulf Stream, it's much warmer than that bit. So they would get like minus 35 in the winter, the worst we've ever had in all of human existence. Was in Braemar, and it was minus 27. Okay? But one of the most famous words that we would use is dreich. Now, on a positive of that, of the terrible winter, and there's news today of in the northeast, snow, and in the Highlands. On the contrast to that, we have very long summer nights. And can usually have really long days if it is a sunny day without any clouds. Now, so that got me into thinking about some of the weather statistics of our nation. So I'm going to show you just that little bit again. Scotland occupies the cooler northern section of Great Britain, as we know, so temperatures are generally lower than the rest of the British Isles. The coldest temperature, minus 27.2, recorded at Braemar on 11th of February 1895, and again on the 10th of January 1982 in Altnahara in the Highlands. That was in Braemar, and then also at Altnahara in the Highlands on the 30th of December 1995. Winters in Scotland have average low of around 0, and it's been around 0 today, hence why I've been to Tesco's and got my CarMackay for my lips. Strawberries was on a club card deal, with similar maximum temperatures averaging 15 to 17 degrees in the Highlands. in the summer. Maximum temperatures averaging 15 to 17. Yeah. In general, western coastal areas are warmer than east and inland due to the influence of the Atlantic currents. However, receive more rainfall. The highest ever was 34.8 degrees in Chartle Hall in the Scottish Borders in 2022, when there was that massive heat wave. For the last 100 years, the coldest winter was in 1963. Average temperature of 0.19 or 32.34 Fahrenheit if you are from stateside and don't know how to understand our language. And the mildest was in 1989 for winters, 5.5 degrees average. The warmest summer was in 2003, average of 14, and the coolest was 10 degrees or 51 Fahrenheit in 1922. So there's a lot of here. We've got a lot of charts, average as a country. Big one I want to talk about was the record low, minus 27.2 or minus 17 Fahrenheit. And the record high, as we mentioned there, in July in Borders, 34.8. So in terms of, the greatest both extremities is around about 60, just over 60 degrees centigrade in difference. So in terms of multitude of temperatures, it's not that drastic. One of the biggest differences that we have is in rainfall. The East Coast, Dundee and Aberdeen, are seen as having some of the most favourable in terms of sunshine hours and also rainfall. Due to the mountains in the middle of our country, a lot of all the rainfall from the Gulf Stream hits all the West Coast. The West Coast is significantly more wet than when it gets to the East Coast because it's dumped all the clouds. The clouds have dumped all the rainfall and precipitation onto the Highlands and particularly Glasgow. So, for example, Dundee, where I'm at, average rainfall throughout the year is around about 750 millimetres of rain each year, which is about 75 centimetres. Average total rainfall throughout the year, or average annual rainfall. Glasgow has an average annual rainfall of around about 1,400 millimetres. So almost twice as much in the West Coast. So when they say it's dreich day in Glasgow or it's grey in Glasgow, most chances are it is likely. Now, as a consequence of that, over in the East Coast, yes, it's much drier, more chance of having more sunshine, and yes, our sunshine hours are significantly more in East Coast. One of the sunniest places is usually between the East Coast or Northeast Coast between Aberdeen and Dundee, and one of the driest places in the country is also somewhere in the same place there. So, for example, Dundee and Aberdeen are the sunniest cities in Scotland. On the longest day of the year, there's no complete darkness over the Northern Isles in Shetland. Has about 4 hours more daylight at midsummer than London. That's nuts, although this is reversed in midwinter, where we are. So there's 4 hours less sunshine per day in Shetland, Lerwick, than in London. That shows you how drastic the change is. And it must be certainly my year past in Dornoch, having that extra sunlight during the late evenings. The sun was literally setting sort of northwest. It would be one of the weirdest things looking over onto Tain or Port Mahomet in Ross-shire, and north-facing houses getting the sun at like 9, half 9 at night. It was nuts. Sun didn't go down until about 11, and even then it wasn't that dark. Annual average sunshine totals varies from about 711 to 1140 hours in the Highlands and the Northwest, and 1400 to 1500 on extreme eastern and southwestern coasts. Average annual sunshine hours over the whole territory are 1160. Isn't that nuts? Scotland is the windiest country in Europe due to eastward moving Atlantic depressions that bring strong winds and clouds continuously throughout the year. Isn't that nuts? Hello, that one viewer. In common with the rest of the United Kingdom, wind prevails from the south-west as it's prevailing because of the Gulf Stream. The windiest areas of Scotland are the north and west. Parts of the Western Isles, Orkney and Shetland have over 30 days of gale force winds per year. Wow. Vigorous Atlantic depressions, also known as European windstorms, are a common feature in autumn and winter. Strongest gust of recorded wind was in, 173 miles an hour on the 20th of March in 1986 in the Cairngorms, but an unofficial one of 194 at the same location at 2008. So, very variable, very variable. In 1968, Scotland storm is described as central Scotland's worst natural disaster since records began in the worst gale in the United Kingdom. 20 people died from the storm, with 9 dead in Glasgow. 700 people were left homeless, and the 1968 cost was 30 million in damage. Cyclone Friedhelm, commonly referred to as Hurricane Ballbag in Scotland, occurred in December 2011. The storm was the worst affect Scotland in 10 years, though a stronger storm occurred less than a month afterwards in 2012. In January, when a stronger storm, Andrea, hit Scotland, the worst affected area was southern Scotland, where several weather stations reported their highest gust ever. More than 100,000 Scottish homes and businesses were left without electricity, with gusts of 102 miles an hour were recorded in Edinburgh. Windstorms can typically begin as early as September, as late as August, so all year round. But sometimes can be as late as November and early such as February in the storm seasons. In January 2025, last year, Storm Ian was anticipated the most destructive windstorm impact for 13 years. Red alert for winds across Scotland, most notably on the southwest coast, in all of East Ayrshire, North Ayrshire, South Ayrshire and Dumfries and Galloway. On the evening of January 23rd, 2025, both the UK government and Scottish government issued an emergency alert to the public in preparation for the forthcoming storm. And tons of schools closed as a result. So yeah, very, very variable. And as a bit of a contrast, one of the most variable cities in Australia is Melbourne in terms of weather. And they would famously say that you can get 4 seasons in a day. Well, Scotland, that happens pretty much all the time. Average annual rainfall in Melbourne is around about 450 millimetres. Average annual rainfall, which I mentioned about Dundee, which is the driest city in Scotland, 750 millimetres. So almost twice as much than one of the worst cities in Australia. So that's why it's so variable. But rather than saying weather is poor and you should all leave, no, we're going to give this a positive spin. One of our famous comedians, or the most famous comedian, Billy Connolly, he had always the joke of, there's no such thing as bad weather, there's just poor choice of clothing. And I'm going to go with that statement. Scotland created some of the best inventions for the modern world. And I'm going to argue, for the purposes of this live stream that nobody is listening to, because of poor weather and mixed weather, men, rather than going to the beach and chilling at the side because of the lovely weather, men went into their sheds and built stuff. And that is where I think our creative spirit as a nation has started and got us to where we are. Mold is penicillin, which was found in this country because of damp weather. So, I'm going to give you a little story here, okay? And this is tying it back to my thinking into results. A mindset of abundance, a mindset of opportunity is what I'm going to say. There was a story of two reporters went to East Africa. I think it was East Africa. That were sent from shoemakers in Manchester. Landed in Africa, and one of them sent back a telegram, went, terrible news. None of them wear any shoes. Another one sent back a telegram saying, glorious opportunity. They don't wear any shoes yet. And that same situation, completely contrasted in terms of the mindset of what the person saw in that moment. The moment was the same thing, but the people there had a completely different experience and mindset of what that information gave them. Scotland does have poor weather or variable weather, but it's made us build some incredible things. It's given us a variety of seasons. Currently, at this moment in time, the Northeast and the Highlands are getting a ton of snow. I'm grateful in this country that we can get a variety of different weathers. We've got temporal rainforests or localized temporal rainforests. We also get droughts. We also get really hot days. We also get really cold days. That variety keeps things fresh, keeps things variable. We get really long summers. We get really short winters. That is the reason why I think this has made this country great, and nobody's going to tell me otherwise. Thank you very much for this short broadcast, and hopefully we will see you in the future. God bless. All the best.